Thank you. Well, I think that we can get started and people can jump on. Thanks everyone for coming. We're really excited about this. Kathy and I got a sneak preview earlier this week and it's great info. So I'm going to let Shannon and Jacqueline do their own little explanation of their background and art and object and how they got started. And then we can dive right in. And I am recording, so it will be posted so you don't have to scramble to take notes. And I'm sure Shannon will be happy to share their PowerPoint presentation so we can have that on the website for you as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for signing up for this. I'm Shannon Cahill, and Jacqueline Henderson is my partner in all things art and object. And we're really happy to be here today and talk about art. And how to price your art. A quick little background on how we got started. I started art and object art consulting about 6 years ago in a very organic, very kind of community grassroots way, in that I have a background in, I was doing some interior design work and staging. And as a part of that, I was bringing art into the settings. I began collecting art myself in my house. I have 4 kids, and because I was in my home all the time staring at blank walls, I started familiarizing myself with Evanston and local artists, and befriended a lot of local artists, and just started collecting their art. And then I would have friends come over and point at pieces and say, would you sell that to me? And would you sell that? And I'd say, no, but I could help you source it. And that's really how it started. I started out helping friends do that. And then they referred me to other people, and it's, and then I turned it into a business, and I've been doing that for, as I said, about 6 years. And right before COVID hit, Jacqueline joined me as my partner. She has a really deep professional background in the arts in Chicago, and I can let her talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Shannon. Well, I was thrilled when Shannon asked me to join her. It happened very organically. We went to the Arts Club for lunch, and then we saw the Arts Club members show, and we both kind of gravitated towards some of the same artists, and then that led to a couple of studio visits, and then we decided we just had a lot of fun doing this. So my background is in the arts. I studied art history. I went to Sotheby's and studied there for a couple of years in London, and then I did a master's degree at the School of the Art Institute in Arts Administration. And then after lots of different jobs, I ended up at Art Chicago. At the time it was called Art Chicago. We're talking 20 years ago. And it was under Tom Blackman. And so I sort of worked there for 3 years. So it was a lot of access to extraordinary art. As you can imagine, went to a lot of the art fairs around the world, Basel, FIAC, Cologne, the Armory, et cetera. So I got exposed to a lot of wonderful art, and it was great. I moved on to do other things after that. And then I basically stayed home to look after my kids. And so I've always kind of wanted to go back into the arts, and this seemed just like a really great way to get back in there. So I'm just getting back into working. I have to say it's taken a little bit of an adjustment, but I'm really enjoying it. And I think my favorite part is definitely working with artists again. I love going to artists' studio visits and just seeing what people are doing. And, I really have been detached from the last, 15, 20 years. And it's just great to see how much incredible creativity there is out there. So I'm thrilled to be here.
And I'll just add before we dive into the presentation is that a big mission for us, as Jacqueline said, she was in the blue chip art world. And our focus is not on blue chip art, but on promoting local artists, focusing on emerging artists who are not yet represented by galleries or do not want to be represented by galleries. In our experience, there's so much incredible art out there that hasn't been that hasn't been widely shown or displayed. And so that's our focus first and foremost when we're exploring artists, is to search out and promote local talent. We're obviously huge fans of Evanston, and we want to promote it. So we love working with Evanston Made too. It just really aligns really well with our mission. So in terms of our presentation or talk today, we are going to talk about pricing your art. Unfortunately, I don't have the definitive piece, the nugget for telling you how you should price your art, but we are going to offer up some formulas that we've seen other artists use. And we also just want to talk about our experience as art consultants, because we place a lot of art and we place a lot of local artists, and we kind of know this market really well now. We know the client base that we work with really well. So I think based on our experiences, not only in our own research of searching out artists that we want to include in what we call our artist inventory, but also what our clients are looking for and what's important to them and how price fits into that. So we want to keep it super informal. If, jump in with questions along the way. And yeah, we'll just go from there. And, just starting out on, so what we'd like to talk about is starting out at a higher, more abstract level about the value of art and what that means in our price of everything world that we live in. And then moving into the more nuts and bolts of pricing your work, and then providing some ideas, again, based on our experience, that hopefully can help you as you're thinking about moving your own work out into the world. So Jacqueline, you want to talk about this more?
Yeah, so this is just, I don't know who, I can't actually see everybody on the grid, which is sort of weird. I don't know how I can see that. But anyway, I don't know if any of you out there have seen this fabulous documentary called The Price of Everything. And it's about art, and it's about, really how little there is a connection between the value and the price of art. And it's a really fantastic piece. We have some, the director is Nathaniel Kahn, he's the son of the architect, Louis Kahn, and he had done the documentary called My Architect. I don't know if any of you saw that. And he just gives you a real insight into sort of trying to understand if art is a true, if the value of something is a true expression of, if the price that you pay for something is a true expression of what that art costs, or if it's just a symptom of this kind of hyped, bubble that is sort of decadent in a way. And I guess throughout this whole movie, you really get a sense that it's a sort of a combination of the two. And I really think it's worthwhile checking it out, because you start realizing that you start thinking about like the value of art. And in a way, great art has to be valued highly, right? When you think about a Vermeer or a Da Vinci or something, if they hadn't been considered sort of priceless, then it wouldn't really, it wouldn't still be here, right? So in some ways, it's super important in a way, and it does make sense for art to have like this incredibly super valued, value, level of fetching incredible prices. And I guess, who does get to determine what the prices of that art is? And I guess in a very, when you talk about this blue chip world, or this world of like, auction houses, and when you're selling, Picasso's for $167 million, at the end of the day, I think what one can conclude is really the people who determine that level of art, and you can see some of these quotes that we have up, is really, it's really not a formula, although we're going to talk about formulas today, interestingly enough, but really it's not necessarily a formula, but it's sort of a collective of the voices of curators, critics, art consultants.
I'm sorry to just interrupt you, but Liz, I can't see anything on my screen. Is there anything, are you showing things on the screen?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay.
We are. I don't think that Liz is connected. Maybe you have to unmute her.
I did unmute her.
Unmute her.
Hi,
Liz?
Amy. Do you see the people?
I see the people, but I don't see anything on the screen.
Go to all the way to the left and hit where it says hide thumbnail video. And then you should just see the screen.
No. Oh, now I don't see anything. Now I can see you. I hit hide thumbnail video and then I didn't see anything.
Okay, well, it's okay if you just want to listen to them. We're going to repost the presentation so you'll be able to see it.
Okay.
The information they're giving it's mostly verbal anyway, so I think it's fine. Sorry about that.
I'm happy to read some of these quotes if you'd like, Amy, if that make you, I mean.
That'd be great, thanks.
So one of them is by an artist called Marilyn Minter, and she says, I don't care if they buy them, I just need to make them. And my gallery would like it if I made much more sellable things. I've really never made any money until recently, but I always got by. If you have something to say, it will be seen. You just might not be alive. That's the sucky part. You might be old or dead, and if you're female, you're bound to be old or dead.
Right.
And then there's another one by Larry Poons, who's one of the artists who's featured in this movie. Art and money have no intrinsic hookup at all. It's not like sports where your batting average is your batting average. You know, that's the bottom line, you know, and they try to make it much more like that. Like the best artist is the most expensive artist, same thing. But again, you know, as we know, it's not true.
Right.
But just to go back to sort of what I was saying is that it really is a collective of voices that sort of eventually start, you know, heightening the sort of the price of art. So I would say curators, you know, critics, art consultants, gallerists, and, you know, and the public that eventually determines that. But we're talking that on a very, very high level. And I guess we just thought it would be important to sort of start this conversation on that level and then to come back and say, okay, but we are talking about real artists that want to have their work placed, and that we are actually placing a lot of contemporary art made by contemporary artists. And so it's a lot more on the practical side of things. There are formulas and there are ways to sort of maneuver and understand it. So now I'm going to let Shannon take it to the next practical level.
Okay. So, and jump in, Jacqueline.
Yes.
So on a more practical level, so moving down to what we do as art consultants and just talking a little bit about our experience and thinking through this, Jacqueline and I discussed, you know, what's important to us, art and object, when we're selecting artists for our clients and when we're selecting artists to contact for studio visits, because we see their work somewhere and we want to know more about them. And ultimately what's important to asking that artist if, hey, can we include you in our inventory of artists that we promote? You know, we're not exclusive, we're not snobby, but there are certain things that we're looking for. And the first one is the first impression. And I wrote up here on our slide here, it's aesthetic, aesthetic, aesthetic. And we are talking art, we are talking visual. So you want something that draws you in immediately. And that's different for everyone, but there is some common in terms of, even if it's a piece of art you like, you move to the next stage of seeking out that artist. And we're gonna talk about this more, but, you know, if I see a piece of art on Instagram, for example, I will immediately go to that artist's website. And if that website is not appealing to me, I'm thinking to myself, well, that artist probably isn't caring too much about how they're presenting and how they're branding. And are they going to be appealing to my clients? Because my clients do ask for websites. They also want to see what the artist has done. And it's really, really important to that first impression for us and for our client. The second thing we look for is the appeal of the art. Can we present this to a range of audiences? You know, we work with we work mostly in residential, but we will work with corporate, nonprofit. And so is the art something that we can really get a lot of bang for buck in terms of getting it out there to our clients? or is it very, unique and discreet and only targeted toward a very specific?
And if I might add that, I think obviously a lot of our clients tend to be, sort of people who are not necessarily collecting art per se. They are extended. It's sort of an extension of the beautiful things they want to have in their home. So we tend to, whereas I've, in certain parts of the art world, maybe art can be, a shock to the system, or, it's making some sort of political statement. The kind of work that our clients tend to like are things that are pleasant to look at, or, that are, not to say that that's the only art that should exist or whatever, but those are the kind of things that we deal with mostly, right? That we will have a harder time presenting kind of very conceptual work, for example.
Yeah, we're trying as art consultants here in the Midwest and in this area, we're trying to please 80% of the people 80% of the time. So while conceptual has its place for sure, and we enjoy going to galleries and exhibits, and that kind of stretch us that way, that's probably not the art that is going to be we're going to be able to place easily. And uniqueness is another. Are we offering our clients something different, something that they can't find at restoration hardware, something that they can't find unminted, something unique, something authentic, something something different and unique.
And original, I would say too, original, sort of, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Jacqueline.
Yeah, and I would say something original, something
original, yeah,
absolutely, where it's not sort of replicated everywhere, and it's sort of and that's where the connection with somebody local really is important, because it's always really nice, and most clients really enjoy meeting the artist eventually, or doing a studio visit, or kind of feeling connected to the artwork. I think one of the things that I would say is very appealing to our clients is knowing the stories behind these people. They like that connection with an actual person,
right? Mm-hmm. And then for us, the I'm putting it as number 4, but it falls after we get through these first 3 things. The next thing is the price. Can we move the piece? Can we move the art? And we work with a good range of clients in terms of budget, and we can place art anywhere from $500 to $20,000. And so that's a huge range. And but price is important to us, because we have so many different types of clients and different budgets. We need to be able to offer them a range of art. And just even if we have a client that is a high net worth client and we place some larger pieces, they don't always want to spend that kind of money for their whole house. So we're very aware of being able to offer them different price points in their art options. And then what's important to our clients is, Jacqueline said, initial reaction, connection. That's the number one. We can show them, and we immediately can see by their face if it's going to be something that's going to move to the next level or not. They really want to make that connection. They like to know as Jacqueline said, they like to know the story behind the art, the artist, kind of the branding, and then after that, it's like, does it fit? Like they will ask, like, does it fit aesthetically, and does it actually fit in my space? So these are their concerns, right? And then, and price. We have to do a lot of educating with our clients on price. And I'm sure you're just aware of that, where even though art is a luxury purchase, and clients know that, they still need to be educated in the value of that piece of art. It's always surprising to me that we have clients that work with designers, and we work through designers, and we'll be working with their client, and they just placed a extremely expensive sofa in the room, and all the furnishings and all the build outs and everything else. And number one, art is always the last thing on the list, very unfortunately. It's always the thing that is questioned in terms of the pricing. And it's a constant education thing that we need to work with our clients to show them what the value is of that piece of art. So price is important, and it's interesting to me that someone can go out and spend a lot of money on a pair of shoes or a handbag, but then when it comes to this very emotional, very personal thing that they have, this really and unique, right, like Jacqueline said, and original, they have a hard time understanding why they have to pay that price for it. But that's what we're here for, right? And
a lot of what we do is educate people. It's really, and
yeah.
it's another thing that's fascinating is how many people are actually quite intimidated by art, even at people who are in their 50s and sophisticated people. But some people that have never sort of been part of that, are a little intimidated by it, and almost like we've actually heard people say, "I'm scared," which is interesting. Mm-hmm. So
I'm scared of making the wrong decision. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then in terms of getting into some nuts and bolts, looking at a recipe, and I put this around food because I like to eat. And and during COVID, it's been all about food and art and art and food. So what is a recipe for pricing your work? I can't see everyone, but I'd be curious for a show of hands on how many actually use a formula for pricing their work.
Ted Glasso. Who else?
No. One, did you say? One person?
I think I see one person, yeah.
Because I'm sorry?
Ginny, two people.
Oh, Ginny, okay. From my experience in talking with other artists and in just doing a quick search on the internet, there seem to be 3 popular formulas that artists use in pricing their work. And Jacqueline and I just did a studio visit 2 days ago and asked the artists how they did it, and they did use this. The first one is just a square inch formula where you take the length of your piece, and again, this is all else equal, okay? We're talking about the same type of work, like a watercolor or a photograph. I'm just saying within your medium, looking at the size and actually pricing it by size, and using a square inch where you multiply the length of your canvas by the width of your canvas, and then you multiply that by a multiplier, a dollar amount, a factor that you come up with based on different variables that we're going to talk about in a minute. And there's an example here, and I apologize for the women who can't see it, but we just listed, going from a 4x4 inch piece, a very small piece, to a 32 by 32 inch piece. And you see with a multiplier of $2.50. And you see with a small piece, it's going from $40. And then at 32 inches, you're up to, $2,500, which is a pretty huge exponential increase in the art, which is sometimes difficult for potential buyers to understand. Well, how come this 250 square inch one is $640 and I'm jumping all the way up to $2,500? So this is a good formula because it's super easy, it's straightforward. You can tell your buyers, this is how I price my art, and they can understand that. It's got a little mathematical component to it. The drawback, I think, is that there is such a huge jump between a smaller size to a larger size, and that's you have to be able to defend that. So another way that artists price their work is, instead of by the square inch, they just do the linear inch, where you're actually just adding your length plus your width, and again you're multiplying it by this multiplier, which obviously is more than, in here it's $20. And the pricing is smoother. the slope of the increase as you go from a small size to a large is not as steep. So I think that's easier to explain to clients when they're asked, when they ask about the pricing.
Shannon, there's a couple questions, and I will we'll try to answer it. One is from somebody saying, "What is a multiplier, and how do you arrive at that number? What about pricing 3D sculptural or functional art?" So
Okay.
I think we're going to get to what a multiplier is, which is like a series of different.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that, because that's the hard part, is that multiplier. I feel like these mathematical formulas are very simple, but it's that variable. That's when things get a little crazy. I think there's another way is that some artists do an hourly rate, that is their multiplier, by the hours that they spent on the piece. So whatever your hourly rate is, $30 an hour times 30 hours, times 10 hours that you spent on the piece, and then you come to a dollar value. This is a good, for the person who asked about sculpture, 3D, nonlinear art, this is a way to start to think about a price for that, going by an hourly rate versus the size of your the length times width of your work. It's very easy for potential buyers to understand because everyone understands an hourly rate, and it might be more useful for very time intensive, intricate types of work.
Yeah, I would say
you're spending hours on a very small canvas and you're only charging the length times width, so you might want to think for more time intensive artwork to focus more on an hourly rate by times the hours that you spent.
Yeah, and I would say things like, for example, quilt art, right? Art, some people make beautiful
textile and
unbelievably long time, and so they might be absolutely tiny, but they're very time consuming, and so that would be a really good way to sort of price that.
Any questions? I can't see anyone. So just
can't see anyone. So we did get that question. The other question that we got, I don't know if we can answer this later, but do you find clients requesting commissions often? I would say we do. We actually have quite a few clients who would love commissions. They might like an artist's work, and they maybe that particular work is too small, or it maybe has slightly different colors, but they really like the sort of their style or the composition or the colors, and so we often will have people asking if the artist would do commissions, and it's always great when they can.
Yeah, and I'm going to put tag that up there because that's something we're going to talk about. And there's also some implications of offering for the artists that you need to think about when offering commissions that we've run into with clients. But we'll get to that. So the person who asked about what is that multiplier, what is it? What goes in there? What do you have to think about when you're coming up with that number, either your hourly rate or that multiplier if you're doing linear or square inch kind of formulas. And again, there's a big jump, right? So if you're doing, just for example, if you're doing a square inch formula for your work and you're using a $2 multiplier versus versus an artist who's using a $4 multiplier, that's like double the price. So even though it doesn't seem much, $2 to $4, it makes a big difference, and it's a huge jump. So if you're looking at, for example, a 30 by 30 artwork, at a $2 multiplier at $1,800, and at a $4 multiplier at $3,600. So again, even though it seems like just a little jump can make a big difference on your price. So you have to really think through what that multiplier is and what goes in it, because you're going to have to defend that to your clients. So some of the things that go in to a multiplier. Number one, I think a huge one, but yeah, again, some of these things it's interesting because sometimes the clients just don't care about these variables, or some things are more important to them than others. the experience, that's kind of the number one in my, like, what phase are you in your career? Are you in emerging? Are you established? Do you have a formal education? Do you have a bachelor's in the arts? Do you have a master's? I think all of that has to play into, just like it would for anyone's career. You know, when you're starting out, you're just not making as much as when you're you know, when you've been with the company or in your profession for, you know, 10, 20, 30 years. So that's an important thing for you to think about. Another big thing is exposure. How have you been exposed in the art world? Are you represented? Have you been represented? Are you unrepresented? Have you done shows? Have you had any solo shows? Have you had any press, and what kind of press was that? Was it in it, you know, have you been in reputable, you know, arts magazines or, you know, and the like? So that's important.
I think that's almost one of the absolute most important ones, I would say. I would argue, like, out of all of them, because it's really so much of exposure is eventually what gets you recognition, which is a lot of white people are willing to pay more if there's more recognition. And so it's sort of like, I think solo shows, group shows, you know, that kind of thing is extraordinarily important, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I think the appeal of your art, your audience, are you focused on residential? Are you focused on corporate? Are you doing public art? How large is your audience? Like, how big is the appeal? Are you looking for art? Are you looking to place your art? I want a piece of my art in every single, you know, home in Evanston. Like every Evanstonian should have a piece of my art. Or would you prefer to be exclusive? Are you focused more on conceptual? Like, this is my art, and if you like me, come and find me. Or are you, you know, willing to be more not decorative artists, but are you willing to be picked up by an interior designer because your art fits into their vision for a room or a house? Those are things you have to think about as an artist. Some artists don't want to be known as in the decorative art field. Another thing is, what's your reach? Are you looking to just stay within the Midwest? Do you want to ship, and are you willing to ship your art worldwide? Or anywhere in between there? There's a big difference between, you know, what you can charge regionally versus what you can charge, you know, to people overseas or in California or in New York. So those are things you need to think about too. But with that comes responsibility. Like, shipping is a big pain in the butt, you know, that we found with artists. Even, you know, international shipping is a big pain. But, you know, we have placed artists from Europe, so because they're willing to deal with all of the shipping and the VAT and everything else that goes with it to get their art out there.
And I would say one more thing about that is that it really, I mean, just the same that real estate would be probably more expensive in a place like Chicago than in a rural environment, or that New York is more expensive than Chicago. I mean, in some ways, there is a correlation between sort of like pricing of goods and, you know, like you would probably, your salary might be higher in a place like New York City than it would be in Chicago. Same kind of thing, I think, with art in general, is that sort of the levels of pricing is going to be different in a smaller city than in a larger city. I think that definitely there's a correlation there for sure. And so therefore, your multiplier would depend on where you're selling your work. So there's a lot of things to sort of consider in this. Right. So go ahead, Shannon, sorry.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. The other is the medium in which you work. And again, that kind of goes back to demand. You know, we find that there are trends in the art world of what people are looking for. And if you happen to be right on that wave, on that current trend, well, your art's going to be, the demand of your art's going to be higher, and you can charge, you know, more for it. And then you get down to like the nuts and bolts. Like, you have to think about how much does it cost to actually create your art? And we're not just talking about your supplies, but we're talking about like capital investment. You know, we work with an artist who just purchased her own press, like, you know, Ben Blount has his own, letter press. Like, these things are expensive. You're paying for studios, you're paying for rent, all of these things that need to be taken into account when you're pricing your art, because you definitely don't want to price it so that you're not even covering your costs. And then what are your professional goals? Like, what's your sales volume? Is it in number of pieces sold, or is it in dollar of pieces sold, or some combination of that? Are you looking for to elevate your status in the art world? Those are all things that you need to consider when you're thinking about pricing your art. And then it's just a lot of times it comes down to a gut feeling. We were visiting an artist the other day and asked him how he priced his art, and he does a square inch. He works on canvas for the most part. He does do sculpture too, and when he actually had a really difficult time articulating how he would price the sculpture. So that was interesting, but not surprising. On the canvas, he said, I do length times width, and then I multiply it by X. And we asked him, well, why X? And he's like, I don't know. It just it just felt right. Like when I used it and I saw what the end price was, it just it felt right. I'm an emerging artist. I haven't been out there, and I just felt good with this number. So it comes down to a gut feeling too.
And I think tied with this gut feeling is another question that came up. Is it, on a practical level, as an artist, is it a matter of knowing what a particular market will bear? And I would argue yes. I mean, really, because there's a lot of fluidity in this. This is all a subjective thing. There's really not one objective, that a certain piece of art should fetch a certain amount. If you're able to sort of bear it, and the market will, if there's demand for your work and you're able to sell it, then that's your answer, right? But I would say that I think another piece, and I can't remember if we have it written down later, but so much of it has to do also with comparison issues, right? Like if you see somebody else who does similar work to yours, I know we're all unique artists, but that is also another way to kind of say, well, if this kind of work is selling for this kind of money, and it's about the same sort of the general kind of sort of artwork that I'm doing, that can be also a helpful parameter.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
yeah.
we'll talk about that as.
Yeah.
So some words of advice from art consultants who have been out there. No matter what you price your art at, there are a few, things that we think is important. And the first one is that you should stick to it. Once you set your price and you feel good about it, you can't apologize for that. The only thing you can do is you need to make sure that you can support that price to your clients, and be able to do that in two sentences. Don't go into a whole, well, I started, as, I have this education and then I worked here. Like, they can see that on your website, but just in two sentences, why it's priced at this level. We have an artist that she raises her prices 15% a year, which is huge. But she believes in, she really believes in herself. She believes in her art. She really collects the numbers. She sees, how she's done in the prior year, and she sets her pricing according to how she did, and she doesn't apologize for it. And I've said to her, oh, you might be pricing yourself out of some clients that we work with, but not all, because we actually just sold a bunch of her work, which is great. But, she doesn't apologize. She's like, I believe that's where I am, and that's where I'm staying. And it works for her. Another piece of advice, if you sell a piece and you immediately experience seller's remorse, then you're probably selling too low. But on the other hand, if you're slightly uncomfortable when you're stating your price, then you're probably where you need to be. It should be, Jacqueline and I are consultants. We charge an hourly rate. When we tell our hourly rate to clients. I'm always, Jacqueline has no issue, but I'm always a little, but it is. I mean, in the end, we provide what we said they'll provide. We do an amazing job, and they get what they paid for, and we believe in that. So being uncomfortable about your price doesn't mean that it's too high, and so you should be okay with that. Another thing is maintain your price integrity. Don't go all over the board. Keep your prices consistent. Probably keep them consistent on an annual basis, and definitely keep them consistent across, like if you're with a gallery versus if you're selling online and if you're selling to individuals, because in today's world, people can get access to information really, really easily. And if you sell an individual a piece of work and then they go on to Saatchi and they see that you're on there, for less than what they just paid you, there goes your reputation. And it just takes one of those, and it's done. Jacqueline and I are so incredibly transparent when we're working with our clients about how we work with the artist, how we bill them for the art, and we keep our prices. We do not upcharge on the art. We charge exactly what they would pay if they came to your studio and purchased a piece from you. So we negotiate on the artist side. We do not upcharge for the art, because we don't want our clients going into someone else's house and saying, "Oh my gosh, so you have Kathy Halper," and then it comes out that they paid so much less for it. It's just yucky, and you just don't want to put yourself in that situation. So, long drawn out way of saying, maintain price integrity. That's super, super important.
We have a question from somebody about how does the medium become a factor? And I think interestingly enough, I think another thing that Kathy wrote down was that, for example, for textiles, people aren't willing to pay for textile, which I think is really interesting. I think the medium is a factor. I mean, I think when you do something that is usually like oils on canvas tend to be higher price than works on paper. Certainly prints that are, several, so that's not just a one-off, would probably fetch less money than an original, right? So I think, I do think that the medium becomes a factor. I mean, some people are, what about oils compared to acrylics? I would say that doesn't make a huge difference between oils and acrylics, but I would say the difference would be, between, photography maybe would be different than, I mean, although there's amazingly, incredibly high prices being fetched for photography, that kind of broke many years ago, but still, I mean, in our market, in our world where we're selling pieces that are under $20,000, I would say all of those issues are things to consider. Is the medium does have an effect on the multiplier for sure. And then what about selling at art fairs versus online? What do you think about that? I think, I don't exactly know what.
I don't know what you're asking.
What the question is, yeah.
I mean, if for pricing, keep the pricing the same as an art fair as you would online.
Yeah.
If that's the question.
Mm-hmm. And then the other one is, what about alternative printmaking processes? And there's a lot of wide range of art fairs, right? It depends if you're selling at an art fair that's kind of a local art fair from a, sort of in the neighborhood, or if it's an international art fair that is highly difficult to get into and it's through galleries and all that. Most likely at this point, you would be, actually most large art fairs, you'd have to be represented by a gallery to get in. It's not, they're not artist based, they're gallery based. But these are all, these definitely all affect the multiplier and affect the decision in terms of how you price work.
Right. Yeah. And then the last one, strive to increase your value of your art over time, but be able to justify to buyers your price increase. So I think keeping good records of not only, I said of your cost, but not only of your cost, but I mean, obviously keeping records of your sales, looking at trends over time. You know, how did my sales do over the last 5 years? Is it on an upward trend? What are my costs over the time? So it's really like, you know, you got to go in and do a little bit of some, you know, analysis, some, you know, little statistical analysis of your, you know, of your work, and reassess it, you know, at least annually, maybe every 6 months. But I think keeping records and looking at trends of sales is a really good way to, you know, help you reassess at the end of some time period what you want to do with your pricing. So then going, and Jacqueline talked about, we hit some of these things, but I think there's a few things to also help you, not only in what we've also offered up to think about in terms of that multiplier, but what else can you do? Jacqueline mentioned, look at what everyone else is doing. Ask other artists that are similar to you. Visit galleries that represent emerging and established. There are so many galleries in Chicago, it's mind-blowing. Jacqueline and I try to do a gallery visit a few times, you know, at least 2 gallery visits per month. And from the high-end galleries to these very small, hole-in-the-wall galleries that are it's just amazing what's out there. So if you do a search on, and we can offer some, you know, for you to check out, but there are some that work with emerging artists, and it's really good to go there and talk to the gallerist and see how, you know, what they're looking for in terms of an artist and what they're charging. And there's also a lot of really, really good online places like Artsy. New American Paintings is a great website to look at comparable artists, because they list the artists, they give their background, they give their medium, they give their, you know, everything. So that's a really good place to start, to look at artists who are similar to you along a range of these different variables. Saatchi is a really good website. They sell art. I don't know, maybe some of you actually sell on Saatchi, but you can go in and you can look at from size to price to medium to region. So that's a really, really good place to see how much art is selling for. First Dibs, Cherish, all of these online design websites now are selling art, and artists are getting on there and selling their art. So it's you know, if you're looking to see what's out there, there's more than enough information online of what other art is selling and what it's selling for. If you're interested in, you know, expanding, like, cover your market, offer your art at various price points. It's, you know, we've talked with artists who are at a higher price point selling larger pieces of art, and they've asked about, well, you know, are there other things we can do? And we've said, you know, loop in those art collectors and those people who want art but can't afford your price right now, and do that by offering smaller pieces, offering prints. Consider doing a commission, like Jacqueline said. Maybe they can't afford one of your larger pieces, but they would definitely be open to a commission for a smaller piece. And here's what I want to say about commissions. If you're going to upcharge on a commission, be clear about why you're upcharging and what that is. We've gotten into situations where because Jacqueline and I understand the need for an upcharge on a commission, but the client didn't. And it wasn't, there was some confusion, and it was kind of sticky. So if you do consider commissions, maybe have it very clear on your website, or when you talk with a client, and if you upcharge, why you do that and what that upcharge is. Because clients don't always understand that. They're like, well, if they're painting anyway, you know, why are they upcharging me? Because I just asked them for something specific. So that's an important point. Branding yourself. again, this goes back to aesthetic and first impressions, and just having this image of how you want to come across to clients, to potential buyers. Again, we look for websites that really represent the art that the artist is making. We don't want to see beautiful art and then see a website that's probably shouldn't even be up. The website should also be very specific about, the art that's available, the background of the artist. You don't have to have pricing on your website. I personally love when they have pricing because it helps me right away figure out if that's something I can include in a portfolio for a potential client without having to go to the artist. But that's not necessary if you're not comfortable with that. But definitely the aesthetic of a website, of your Instagram page, of any kind of social media platform that you're on. Super, super important. Jacqueline, any?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that's like, honestly, it's all about aesthetics. So it really is it will make a difference. It will make or break. The way we work is that we present, let's say, 3 different artists for one space. And when we bring the art and then the follow up in terms of like showing the client, the website, I will tell you 9 out of 10 times, if the website is a beautiful website with gorgeous work that is placed, photographed professionally and all kind of stuff, that will sell. I mean, suddenly that it becomes, that much more appealing, and that will maybe tip the scale to them picking that. So I really do think that the best standard, it really, you have to have really high standards of the way you present stuff.
And that's like this last bullet point, is that art is a luxury item. So you should present your art as a luxury item with the highest standards. Use good quality photography, use good quality framing if you're framing your piece, maintain a well-designed website. Here's another thing on the website. Clients like to see the art placed in institute. So they want to go on your website and see that you've actually have photos of your art that have been placed in a home or whoever you're selling to. It's a psychological thing. Like, oh, okay, if these people bought the art, then I should also buy the art. Like, no one wants to be that first person to place that piece, but if they see a range of different installations on your website, that really, really helps.
Yeah, and if they're institutional, like they might be in some beautiful, office building that was built by some fabulous architect. I mean, that certainly helps as well, right? It's like really like the price of art, like the provenance, right? If you know that this piece has been in a collection of somebody really important, it raises its value, right? So I think this loops right back to this idea that, the multiplier can be bigger if you have a lot more exposure, I think a lot of the more you can charge more if you're recognized more by more people, and it's like a catch-22 kind of thing in a way, right? So there's a couple. I keep seeing questions. I feel like I've lost track. It was hard for me to keep up. I don't know if we're almost at time, right? I was just concerned if we had time to answer some of these questions. I don't know if we should ask.
I think we're good for right now. I saved the chat so that if we have things that we can't answer, we can certainly circle back. But I wanted you to be able to wrap up. And then if there's anything somebody didn't type, we'll give them a couple minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. Here are some sources that Jacqueline and I like. I mean, the documentary, if you haven't seen The Price of Everything, we highly recommend it. It's an excellent, really well done. And even if you're not in the arts, like it's just an incredibly fun, well done, thought-provoking piece of art, piece of film. 2 really good, fun reads by Sarah Thornton, who was the art critic for The Economist, I think, like the head art critic, and she did anthropological studies in the art world. 7 Days in the Art World and 33 Artists in 3 Acts. 2 really, really good, fun books that go kind of dive deeper into what we were talking about at the beginning of the presentation about the value of art Just good fun reads.
They
And
are
then
super fun.
Renee, this website, when I was doing some background research on how to price your art, I just was looking across, I did a Google search to see where things like came together and commonalities. And this website in particular caught my eye, Renee Phillips. I think she's an art coach, but she just has a really nicely laid out website with a lot of information for artists. If you wanted to take a look at that. And then the website New American Paintings, again, excellent website for looking across the range of art and artists, and giving you like a good idea of what artists who fit within your circle are charging and what they're doing with their arts. And then if you want to talk to us, I mean, you know, we're here, we're Evanston based. This is what we do. We work with artists and we work with art all the time. We have a pretty good, again, going back to that gut reaction, right, Jacqueline, of how we feel about pricing and how we feel about being able to place art. So if you know, we're happy to talk to you if you have any, you know, specific questions about your own work. Anything else, Jacqueline?
No, I think this is, I hope this was helpful for everybody, because I think there's definitely, this is it's something that you can't answer in 1 hour, but it's really, there's a lot of, I hope that you're walking away kind of feeling like there's a lot of things to think about, and that it has given you some sort of things to hang on to and to think about moving forward.
We don't usually get overwhelmed with questions, so I think you guys, you know, should feel really good that you have stimulated our audience, and they want more.
Okay, good. Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks.
You know where to find us.
I was saving the chat, so if there's something else that's come up, I will make sure that we have a little convo and we can post the information as a sort of PS when we post this on the website for you guys to review. And thanks so much, Shannon and Jacqueline, for being here with us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. This was great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. And thanks, Evanston Artists, because like without you guys, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.